All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Digital Influence Show. I get to be the host, Brandon Lee, and I have with me today Adam Shapiro, who is the president of Sales Reform School. And I'm really excited for today's conversation because Adam has got, about 20 years experience as a president of Sales Reform School, where he has been coaching and training sales teams to improve their sales performance. But what I really like about Adam is just the simplicity and the practicality of what he talks about, what he trains, and how that applies to building his digital influence. So today, we're going to talk about how to build and execute a content strategy to grow pipeline and accelerate deal flow. That's kind of the formal stuff. But really, Adam, what we're going to talk about is how do we show up in social media and say stuff and build pipeline and close deals? Sound about right?
Sounds about right. Thanks for having me, Brandon.
Adam, thanks for being here so much. Hey, tell everybody a little bit about yourself before we jump in with my first question.
Sure. So late summer, early fall 2004, I hung out my own shingle as a sales consultant, helping small and medium-sized companies with how they sell business-to-business sales. I was sitting with a colleague of mine, and I'm telling him, this guy's name is Jonathan. I said, Jonathan, I'm trying to get people to realize all the bad habits that they need to get rid of in sales and be more disciplined and marry up messaging and sales process to really put out their best foot forward and propel themselves to be excellent in what they do with sales. And he laughed and he said, you're like reform school for salespeople. Sitting there over wings. I dropped my wings and I said, that's mine. I'm taking it. That afternoon, I registered a trademark. I got the website, and I was off on sales reform school. The smile you have on your face is what I get about 95% of the time.
I bet.
And it still confirms for me that it was a great move.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, the begs the question: what do you get the other 5%?
I'm
kidding.
Right. It's like you can't please everybody all the time.
Please everybody.
Right. I guess I'm not everybody's cup of tea.
Well, we can be what's Kristen's books, my friend Kristen Andre's book. We're not for everybody, but we can be for everyone.
There you go. Right.
Yeah. So sorry to interrupt, but keep going. I totally interrupted your story.
So if you looked at my bio, of course, on LinkedIn, you'll see that I did graduate law school and I did practice for a few years. So I'm even a reformed lawyer in that sense. One of the best things that I got out of my legal education, even practicing for a little bit, was writing skills. So I realized right away that not only do I enjoy writing, but it's a way for me to get the message out on who I am, what I'm all about. And while I don't pretend that someone's going to land on a piece of writing that I've done or a piece of content, whether it's on LinkedIn or my website or elsewhere, oh, I need to go hire this guy. I've never heard of him before. Let's go work together. I don't pretend that's what my content's for. What it does do is serve as a proof step for me.
Right.
So I meet someone or someone else is talking about me with somebody else, and they say, well, let me check this guy out. And they see some of the things I've written, whether it's, again, on LinkedIn or my website. And they realize, okay, he's got something to say, and that's a little different than what I've seen before. I want to talk to this guy, or I'll continue talking to this guy.
Yeah. So that approach would be, a lot of people I talk to would call that a little bit more of a passive approach. Do you think that's a passive approach to your content?
So yes and no. So sure, it's a passive approach in that I'm writing out there, I'm putting stuff out into the world. I'm saying, hey, the term gets bandied about a lot. I'm a thought leader on these things like sales and how an individual or a small team can start improving in sales. But I also use those things as tools to be proactive within my, whether you call it business development process or even closing process. So I'll hear someone else talking and I'll reference something that I've written. And they'll be like, oh, this guy really does that. Or I'll see a comment or a post. I'll go, that reminds me of something, and I'll insert it proactively. So to the extent that the original writing is passive, the use of those artifacts, if you will, is active.
Yeah, and I think that's where the strategical outreach approach comes in. And when I talk to a lot of sales leaders that have these preconceived notion of, social media is great, but we don't have time to use it. What I hear a lot of times, what I'm hearing them say, even though they don't say it, is, yeah, it's nice that we're going to create content, but it's just going to float out there and just be there. And maybe eventually, what we're talking about is owning our outreach in social and in digital by using that content very strategically
Yeah.
to stay top of mind and
So
share our
one of the
experiences.
mistakes that I see is marketing puts out a piece. It's 3 or 4 minutes to read. They put it on their website. They tell everyone, hey, go share this on LinkedIn and elsewhere. And the sales rep does that. Well, I'm doing what I'm told. I don't know any better.
Right.
Well, if you're not doing anything else other than just resharing what your marketing department's put together, why does your prospect need to talk to you?
Right.
Other than that's your sales process, but you're not adding any value to the conversation. So
Right.
as you've hit on to do it using some intelligence and artificial intelligence, perhaps even taking that content and saying, this is why you should pay attention to this.
Right.
So, seeing things out there in the world and going, people that know me, my contacts, my connections should understand this is why what I'm reading right here is important. So I don't have time for it. Well, okay. What else are you going to do?
Yeah. Make more cold calls that don't get
Tell
returned.
me what's better. Tell me what's working
Yeah.
more than that.
Yeah. So I want to back up. I love that we started going that deep, but I want to back up a little bit. What you and I have talked about sharing today with people is how to build and execute a content strategy with the goal of growing pipeline and accelerate deal flow. There's a lot of jargon words in there, but basically what we're saying is, how do we talk to people in a digital world that gives us more opportunities and gets those opportunities to us faster? Right?
Yeah. So
How do we do that?
there's two sets of groups that I want to talk. Well, really three if you think about it. So there's the individuals. I'm an individual solopreneur. I do what I do. I anticipate, and by the way, small companies do this as well. Who's your market? Who's your ideal client profile? What are the 3 or 4 characteristics of them that you especially, but not exclusively, help? And then within those companies, what are the 3 or 4 functions or titles that you expect to need to come across in order for them to select you, fund you, implement you, those sort of things? Once we've done that basic work, now when I have a piece of content, either my company has generated or I see out there in the world from someone else, how do I position that content so that the person who I'm talking to electronically through a LinkedIn post or social media post or other post, or even an email for that matter, the less effective. How do I position that to hit on that person's perceived that I expect to hear their goals, objectives, challenges, and issues? So before you even start diving in and posting, let's figure that out first.
Right.
And then make sure that we're always hitting on how this ties back to what's important to them.
Right. Now, is this where I know you mentioned earlier, like one of the worst things salespeople can do is marketing creates a post and says share it, and they share it, but they don't say anything about it. But that seems what you just said about knowing who your audience is and knowing what their challenges are. That might be a good area we could leverage what marketing's already done and not have to recreate the wheel.
So a best practice with marketing teams is to come up with a persona, your buyer personas.
Right.
So who do we expect, whether interacting with our website, interacting with a booth at a trade show, or in one-on-one conversations, who do we expect to encounter? And those are your personas. For me, it's going to be CEO, CMO, and Chief Sales Officer, Senior VP of Sales, or whatever title it is that fits those three positions. So it's important that if you're unknown, and let's face it, I'm relatively unknown.
Yeah,
You're starting out a relatively new company. You're relatively unknown. You really have to concentrate your efforts on your key players. Now, I said when you're known, larger companies who already have a good name out there, have a brand, all those sort of things, they expect people to know who they are. So when they position their marketing pieces, you can really just pump yourselves up. And there's a difference there.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the first thing we want to do is understand how we're going to get in alignment
Yeah.
with our key players and then position whatever content we have towards them.
Got it. So do you think that's very interesting what you just said? Our data shows that when anybody posts something that's advertorial or advertising or brochure-ish, that it gets extremely low engagement. And I think the psychology of it is nobody cares when you talk about yourself. Were you saying that like larger companies can get away with that? They can just talk about themselves because they're already established brand?
I think an established brand, if I'm a salesperson at an established brand and one of the writers at my company has put out something that's meaningful and works, it's easier for me to position that as to why you should pay attention to this. Now, having said that, I hear where you're going. Having said that, there's two ways to build trust in my mind. Either you use numbers, I've been doing this for 20 years. That's a number. Or you tell stories about what other people say. My clients say that my branding is all about telling the truth, dealing with integrity, getting granular on things that really help, things like that, and
Right.
brutal honesty. So either you're saying what other people say about you, or you're using numbers and metrics to prove your point. It's even more important when you're trying to position thought pieces from your company that nobody reads, like you're saying, to pull out those trust points, data, or says someone else.
Yeah.
So in the larger companies, you'll see a lot of posts about what the analysts are saying about us. Well, introduce it by saying Gartner has put us in blankety blankety blank because of the following. That's not me saying we're great. That's Gartner saying we're great.
Right. Okay. So I think the bottom line with that is, and I mean, we could kind of go off on that is we talk about building and executing a personal content strategy to fill our pipeline. There may be some nuanced differences between somebody, a sales professional in an enterprise, and a sales professional in mid-market, SMB, small business, whatever it may be. There may be some nuances there. We can talk about that another time. But first step, then, as you said, is persona. Know who they are and what they need. Then what?
Well, are you the person creating the content? So, in other words, the actual thought piece plus the posts, or is someone else doing that and you're repackaging it? It's an important distinction. So it's a branch decision. Let's assume you're writing the content as well as putting it out there. You got to start writing. Not only that, you got to get an editor. So I actually have a couple friends, especially early on in building my business, 2014, 2015, I'm sorry, 2004, 2005, 2006. I would write things, I would send it to them and I'd say, how's this?
Yeah.
And they were gracious enough to give me feedback on it. Yeah, that's kind of BS. That doesn't do anything for me. Or, wow, this is really good. Here's some edits. So find yourself an editor.
Right.
Beg people that you respect to look at your stuff before you put it out there. So that to me, that's the first part.
Okay.
And
now, let me ask this question before you go on. Business owners versus sales professionals. Do you believe like a sales rep should be creating their own content, or should they just be creating like social post as a content, but not necessarily an article? Or maybe they do video. What's the difference there?
What's the salesperson's pipeline look like? There are plenty of companies that out there that are doing really well, where all their salespeople do is process inbound interest. They don't have time to post on posts. Let's assume
we're talking about building pipeline.
So you're starting from scratch. You're starting from scratch. We need to get out there. I think you can overshare, but you should be doing something.
Right.
Especially because you never know what's coming around the block. So if I'm counseling, let's even call it a younger salesperson, and he's like, well, I don't post on LinkedIn. I'll let my company do that. I'm like, okay. And 9 months from now, something happens with your CEO and your company starts failing and you're out there looking for a job. No one knows you.
Right.
Yeah. You don't start building up that reservoir of goodwill because you've done something smart. online.
Yeah. Well,
So
and that reminds me of one of our clients, John Rodaden. He's out of the UK, younger guy than me. He's in his 20s, SDR, and he started producing content. Now, he wasn't writing unique content. I differentiate between unique content and social post. So he's more curating. Hey, I read this article. This is what I think. This is how it applies to my clients, which I think is good enough. But the point of the story is he started doing that, and within 6 months, he was getting recruited for a lot of other roles because
fantastic.
he had this presence. He was saying what he thought, and he wasn't saying I'm an expert because he was young, but he was saying this is what I think, this is what I've experienced. What do you guys think? I mean, and he's like, I doubled my income, was getting recruited, and I'm selling a product that's got a better, a bigger commission structure for it. And it all was because he just started sharing content from his brain, not what other people wrote.
One of Gladwell's books talks about connectors and mavens, and there's another. I forgot what the third person is. There's a third one. Well, he talks about how be the person. Well, maybe he doesn't say this, but this is what I got out of it. Be the person people come to for other things. Be the connector.
Right.
Also, be the person who people recognize as he knows a lot about a lot of things. I'll ask them what they think about this. So the young rep that you're talking about maybe wasn't an expert in what he was sharing, but he was gaining in information and being a fountain, if you will, on things that others would look to, like, oh, I saw something from that guy. Let me see what he thinks about this. So the connector and maven aspect of especially salespeople is vitally important to career success.
Right. Absolutely. So you've talked about, Adam, we got to know our persona. We got to know who we're speaking to and what they care about. And then we're creating content, whether we're writing unique content or they're developing, curating social post. What's next?
I'm not always the best. I'm not the cobbler who has new shoes for my kids all the time. What I'm about to say, if you go back into my history, it's not always happening. But you do need to come up with a content calendar.
Grace is there for all of us because we
I
all
highly
talk a better
recommend
game than we
trying
do.
to come up with a cadence on how often you post. Now, if you're comfortable posting on, like you are, on posting on the personal and on such a heavy regular basis, go for it. If that's your personality, if it works. I don't want to do anything that's unnatural to you. So come up with what you think is the a min max. Some would even say minimal, reasonable, and visionary amount of interactions and postings to where you're understood and appreciated without being a nuisance.
Right.
So where is that line? I think you'll know as you start getting feedback from your market. And by the way, I will say also that another part of implementing that strategy is asking for honest feedback from your friends and colleagues.
Right.
Hey, what'd you think of that? Am I doing too much? Do you see this as working? That sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that's phenomenal advice. And I do think that, this isn't, I'm going to say this and phrase it in a question if I don't screw it up. There's too much content from people when it's not good content. When it's great content, there's not enough content, right? Our audience will tell us, but I think it takes trial and error and practice. And too often, and I don't know why, too often in social media, people are looking for the magic bullet. But I've never met a sales leader in the world that handed a phone to somebody and said, start making phone calls, and expected it to be automated, to be perfect, and not to have to practice over and over again. How would you address that topic?
Well, first of all, everything you and I would tell someone in their sales career from first initiation all the way through closing is all about ratcheting up the probability of success. If it was a coin operated slot machine where you could just pull down an arm and things happen and sales get made, they wouldn't need us. So we're always trying to ratchet up the probability of success. Some of the things we learned from the engineers in the world is we're also trying new things. So what works and what doesn't work. Hey, if you're being successful with what you're doing, keep doing it. Keep Bull Durham. Don't mess with a streak.
Don't mess with the
Don't
streak.
mess with the streak. If it's working for you, if it's not working for you, figure out why or ask
Yeah.
questions. So I do want to make sure that that introspection is part of what you do. Otherwise, you're just going through the motions. I
Right.
want to also say one other thing. How do you make this work? Um, your joy comes out in your posts.
Thank you.
So yeah. So, and I think that when people are over posting and there's no emotion there, whether it's joy, seriousness, um, even I'll call it erudition to be erudite about it. Even like eggheadedness or thoughtfulness or whatever it is.
Yeah.
If that doesn't come out, what are you doing?
Right.
So figure out your brand and your style,
Mm-hmm.
and make sure it comes out in what you're posting. Because I think that's a key piece of strategy that's lost.
I think I love that you brought that up, Adam, because I think that's the most important one. I mean, the term imposter syndrome came about for a reason. And it's because most people struggle with, if I brought my authentic self into this social environment, nobody would accept me. And therefore, if they get the courage to go and be socially active, it's inauthentic. And man, we pick up on that. Like we may not be able to say exactly what it is, but we pick up on that. Craig does a great job of that. Craig, thanks for jumping in. Promoting your passion, right? And letting that come out. So I think you're spot on. So what's your advice? Actually, when you've been doing this now for 20 years or so, um, what did you do when you struggled with that? Because I'm assuming you struggled with that authenticity factor, at least in the early stages, because we all do.
I heard a speaker. I'm trying now. I can't remember her name. It's a woman who's very active in the Visage circuit on her branding, and she said, "Be outrageous because it's lonely out there. In other words, you're the only one out there doing it." Was her
Right.
point. The idea that you have to be different to differentiate yourself.
Right.
So I've often have to tell my clients, even people I coach one-on-one or even groups, don't mistake my tone for anger. It's really passion.
Yeah.
And so and they know that, so when they see that, really excited about a recommendation I got or feedback I got from a client or someone that I'm working with, they know that I'm almost brought to tears on that. Like, because it was
Right.
just got me so jazzed that I had an impact on that. So let that come through and figure out what that is. By the way, if you're not enjoying what you're doing, stop doing. Don't do
Right.
it. Figure out. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean to find your passion stuff. I'm not totally into that as much as I am. Find out what you're good at.
Right.
And by and large, if you're good at something, you're going to find some joy in it and have that come through, or whatever other emotion is feeding you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I always find if I tell salespeople all the time, look, if you hate making cold calls, and your job requires it, go find another job.
Yeah.
Right.
There's that. Yeah. Or even like, I have a rep I'm working with right now. He doesn't want to do the work to find people's names and phone numbers and find them on LinkedIn. And he just wants to be given people to call and email.
Yes.
I'm like, the search is part of the joy. The search is part of, getting that treasure map and following that treasure map. There's got the story about twins get on Christmas morning, they walk into their rooms and there's a bunch of horse manure in each room, and one of them just shuts the door and comes back out, and the other one's throwing it all over the place. Like, what are you doing? There's got to be a pony in here somewhere.
Right. That's a great story.
I mean, if you don't attack your job in sales that way, that there's a pony here somewhere, you're either with the wrong company or in the wrong profession.
Yeah. Wrong product, wrong profession, wrong, wrong something.
Actually, I'll mention I wrote an article, a piece on my website and on LinkedIn about how passion is one of the key questions to ask on, can this person sell? Can she sell? Does she wake up in the morning with some amount of passion for what she's working on? Whether it's helping the clients because she enjoys the industry, thinks that the thing she's selling is the best thing she's ever seen, things like that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that translates to how they're selling too, and especially in a social media world, because we have this opportunity to be ourselves at scale. But if you're not comfortable being yourself, well, then you're just going to be inauthentic at scale.
Right.
And
Right.
I just think there's something, you call it karma, call it vibrations, call it, souls with people, spiritual connections, whatever that term is. I think there's just something that people can pick up and just go, something doesn't feel right with that, and they move on to the next person.
I also think that while a lot of us are uncomfortable with risk, we respect risk takers. So we're afraid to dip our toe in this water of putting ourselves out there on social media posts, but we see others doing it and being successful.
Right.
So
Right.
get comfortable with risk, get comfortable with authenticity, get comfortable with putting stuff out there, putting yourself out there.
Yeah. Well, and let's take a look at what Trevor wrote, what he commented on in LinkedIn. And hey, Trevor, thanks for joining today. And I am so proud and of Trevor, and I don't mean that to sound that condescending. Trevor, career history, a career in selling, and felt like there were some challenges with filling his pipeline, fully embraced, and has just gone after using his social presence and his activity to build a reputation and grow his pipeline. And
So
go
can I
ahead,
interrupt?
Adam.
So I want to make sure I understand this question. It sounds like you understand it better than I do. Made videos, really enjoyed them. People say they liked them, but they didn't get the payoff that he was expecting.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you think about that? How do you respond to that?
Do you know if Trevor's B2B sales or B2C sales?
B2B.
B2B sales?
Yeah.
Brandon, you and I were just talking about this.
Go ahead.
You can put great stuff out there. You can lead the horse to it. You can't force them to put their head in the water and drink it. You have to ask for the commitment. Sales is a series of small commitments that leads to a large commitment.
Yeah.
You and I probably read this book 30 years ago, Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore. Only about 20% of the buying public, especially in B2B, is our visionaries or early adopters, where they see what you've got and they go, I got to have that, or I know how to do that, or I know how to use that. The other 80%, you got to show them.
Yeah.
And you got to ask them.
Yeah.
So
Trevor, I'm going to put this up there because Trevor, I didn't want to misrepresent what your intention was, and you were adding to response. What I would like to highlight with this too is when it comes to social. Like, I'll tell you a story. The first blog article I ever wrote and promoted in social media, and this is back in 2012. And I had just sold my third company. Honestly, was probably arrogant. I thought I had all these great things to share. I was writing a book, and I wrote a blog article, and I created social posts. I was so proud of myself because I suck at graphics, but I did it anyway. And I posted it. And I think at the time I did LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook, and that was it. And I went,
I'm done.
And nothing happened.
And then you wait and you're thumbing your fingers.
Yeah, nothing happened. And then like 4 hours later, the worst thing happened is somebody emailed me and said about your blog. And they said, if you're going to write things publicly, you ought to do it right. And they edited my article and sent it to me. It was just, think about a Word document that somebody tracked changes, just read. And what did I do? I went delete, delete, delete. And it took me a couple years to write again. But Trevor, this is where I brought that up, and I wanted to make it as a point, is that, hey, this social environment, it's not if you build it, they will come. It's like finding our ideal customers. It's like discovering which events we go to, which networking events, which conferences we go to. It's testing things on leaving voice messages. Well, let me try this, see if it works. Let me try that and see if it works. Inside of meetings, let me try this closing strategy. It's not working as well as I want. What if I tweak it here? Social is just another thing that we need to try and refine and learn. And I like what you said, Adam. Ask people for their honest opinion.
I'm not sure if this applies with Trevor, but if those 1 to 3 minute videos are still relevant, he now has great proof tools to use as he starts meeting people. Something that someone will say will remind him of one of these videos, and he'll go, I did a video on that a couple of years ago. If it's okay, I'll send it to you. Please give me feedback on it. And you know what? Why don't we follow up next Thursday at 3:00? And I'd love to chat with you about it. See what you think. So ask for that small commitment. Use that artifact that you have from before. Now you can leverage it. Leveraging content is beautiful, by the way. So it's out there, and you always have it.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about that. What are some of the strategies, and we're going to be winding up here soon, but what are a couple of techniques that you do, that you personally do, or you coach people to do? Because not all tactics fit every one of us, but that you leverage content to either stay top of mind or to actually ask for that small commitment, like a virtual coffee or a meeting or.
Right. I was just speaking with someone who I coach, and she said, my organization says don't worry about coffee meetings, but you told me to go have coffee with this person, and it worked. Like, my stuff works every now and then.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm sorry. So your question is around what my content strategy is all about?
Yeah. Well, you had just said the term, leveraging content, like something that Trevor could do is share that video with somebody down the road. What are some other strategies that people can do to leverage content that they've created or continue to create to get that first or small commitment?
Well, there's a few things. So what sort of content are we talking about? Let's assume we're talking about a success story, for example. So you've had some success. A customer has raised their hand and said, you, Trevor, or Craig, or Brandon, you're doing really well here. Here's why. And they tell you about it. I want to create a conversational success story out of that. So I want to have something that I can repeat to others when they're in similar situations as this client that had. I want to write about how excited I am that I got this feedback and post it to it. It may feed a quick video you could put together, whether it's like you and I just speaking to a video, and Brandon, you do a great job of just recording these short videos. Hey, I want to tell you about a great new success story I have. Or perhaps you go on Fiverr and hire someone to do a quick whiteboard video that outlines what happened in that. Now we've got 4 or 5 different ways to leverage that one success story. Okay. You may have a new feature or a new capability in your offering, or a new offering for that matter, whatever it is you sell. And you're like, how do I position this? Well, just announcing that we now have this isn't enough. Mm-hmm. What problem does it solve? Can we describe it? Hey, if you find yourself in this, that, and the other, consider this. Call me to discuss more. That could be a video. That can be a recording. You can send out emails. You can post it on LinkedIn. When you see it in other people's feeds, those challenge issues, goals, objectives that feed to that capability, insert it there. So we have to have these things pre-created. So when the moment comes up, we can throw it in there. One of the biggest problems I see in my prospecting and customer base is their product managers and product marketers come up with new capabilities, new versions, new things they want to put out there into the world. But salespeople don't know how to position them. What's the emergency situation where someone would go, I need that? And they haven't written that down. Once you write that down, now salespeople can put it into posts. They can send it in emails. They can respond to other posts saying, hey, we've got something for that, and leverage it. Yeah. So are we leveraging all the know-how we have on our products, on our capabilities, on our differentiators, and on our brands and culture?
Yeah. Craig's adding into it. Carousels, the use of carousels, I'm assuming, especially in LinkedIn, is referring to our strategic narratives and repost the same content rather than just once. Yeah. And I really like what you said, Adam, with leveraging the content we have. I mean, as we're creating content, we're building, as you call them, the artifacts. We're creating a content hub. And there's no reason to recreate. Like this morning, I was working on a training that's coming up, and I was working on it. And I'm kind of building out, and I went, wait a minute, I've done this before. And I went into my archive, and I'm like, I already have a PowerPoint created. Like, don't do what I do. Know what your artifacts are. Know what's in your library. It's kind of like, I think you saw my post today. Like, I thought all day yesterday was Friday. So these things happen as I get more gray in my beard.
I was a recipient of that not knowing what the day was yesterday.
Gosh, all day long I thought it was Friday. But yeah, I think having that building that arsenal of content and then strategically sharing it with people. One of the ways that I recommend or I prescribe and train to people is, take a piece of content that you wrote based on someone's question and then go share it with 10 other people that have the same title or in the same role or in the same industry.
That's right.
What are some of the other ways that you prescribe to leverage existing content?
So I'm going to quibble with Craig some on what he's posted right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've seen the Matthew Stafford AT&T commercial a gazillion times, and I'm so sick of it. It was really cool the first 10 times. But I want to watch the basketball game last night, so I'm going to see that commercial, and I can't do anything about it unless I watch it on delay, and then I can fast forward through it. Instead of repost, how about reposition the same content? So come up with a small change that repositions it, if you can, for the appropriate either new post or reply in someone else's post. I also worry about people hijacking threads. I think it could very easily, you could become seen as someone who, there's Adam again, to hijacking the thread to throw the focus on him, which is really, really scary. So that's a full stop. Make sure when you're posting someone and someone else as a reply, you're not just taking light off them and you're shining it on yourself, because then you look like a jerk. So I see that and I'm like, that's kind of icky. So it's like, never post on Twitter if you've been drinking. be careful about replying and just consider, hey, was that me or not?
Yeah.
Was
never
that you hijacking?
Never post anywhere when you've been drinking.
Right. There's that too.
I had a client tell me one time, and I won't use last name, but we were talking about the use of Instagram and Facebook, and we're in a private coaching. She goes, "Well, I got a problem there because a drunk Crystal did some really stupid things, and I'm in 30 days of jail with Facebook." I'm like,
oh, I do have one more thing I want to talk about, Brandon.
Please do.
So you ever see someone post a reply and the original poster will say something like, well, tell us what you really feel. Like, because you came at them hard. I don't think that's a bad thing. If I see someone who I think is like, I don't agree with that. My experience has been, as long as I'm thoughtful about it, people look at my profile. Who is this guy?
Right.
What's he all about? And if they're doing that, hey, at least they're talking about me. Right.
Yeah.
So I don't have any problem if you have a sound argument for disagreeing, even in a LinkedIn thread. It could be tactful, but yeah, I'm going to tell you what I really feel.
Yeah.
So that can bother me sometimes when it's like, look, this isn't just PR.
Right. So. Yeah. And I think sometimes your strong approach or strong stance on it is actually going to create clients. We were constantly worried that, gosh, if I say this, it's going to alienate me. Well, you know what? It might get you an invitation as well.
The number one question I get from my coaching clients is, Adam, how do I say? And then they say, so they give me like 3 sentences, and I'll be like, well, just like that.
Yeah. Easy enough. Well, Adam, thank you so much for being with me today. Everybody, Adam Shapiro with the Sales Reform School. Adam, tell everybody how they can find you, and everybody on the podcast. It'll be in the show notes with links and everything if you want to reach out to him.
So on LinkedIn, if you just search for Adam Shapiro and Sales Reform School, you'll find me. There is an Adam Shapiro who's a CFO for hire. That's not me. You don't want me to do that job. So that's not me. And my website is salesreformschool.com. Those are the two best places to find me. I do have a lessons tab on my salesreformschool.com website where you'll see a lot of what I've written before and things that we talked about. And then, of course, I do a MailChimp when I get around to it and send it out. So those are reposted on LinkedIn as well.
Excellent. Excellent. All right, Adam, thank you so much. And everybody else, thank you so much for being a part of the Digital Influence Show today. Thank you to Craig and Trevor for jumping in and commenting. And everybody else, hey, we talked today about how to build and execute a content strategy to grow pipeline and accelerate deal flow. And I don't do this very often, but I am now a host with On Zoom events. And I have a weekly webinar that is coming out that is titled, kind of what we were just talking about, Adam. It is titled hashtag social selling sucks.
So can I, one more thing, Brandon?
Yes, please.
Anyone listening here, look at my LinkedIn profile, send me a direct message. I'll give anyone 30 minutes. So if you do that, I'll respond with my Calendly link for 30 minutes and we can chat about anything. We can chat about 100-degree weather in Atlanta. We can chat about sales. We can chat about whatever you feel like.
Excellent. Excellent. There you go. Find Adam on LinkedIn, and in the show notes will be links and everything to my new On Zoom event that is titled Social Selling Sucks. And I'll share with everybody what I mean by that. So everybody, thank you so much for being part of the Digital Influence Show today. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.